Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, May 10th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, author, activist, journalist, and proprietor of the blogs Crap Hound and Pluralistic. Author of recent books, How to Destroy Surveillance Capitalism and the novel Attack Surface, Cory Doctorow, will be with us to discuss how to destroy surveillance capitalism. Meanwhile, Israeli police assault Palestinian protesters at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Gulf Coast to New York pipeline owned by Colonial is shut down over a cyber threat. Republican governors slash unemployment benefits, hoping to force low-wage workers back to non-existent jobs. Thea Lee, former AFL-CIO trade official, named to head Labor Department's International Affairs. House Republicans set to vote on Liz Cheney's ouster from leadership. New York State AG expands its investigation into Andrew Cuomo over his leveraging of vaccines in exchange for support when he was facing Me Too allegations. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, 68 killed, 165 injured in multiple bombings of a girls' school in Kabul. McDonald's workers will strike in 15 cities on May 19th for a $15 minimum wage. And Joe Biden reverses Trump's transgender health protections. I should say that he has reinstated them. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us at the beginning of another week. Got a lot to talk about. Joining me, Emma Vigeland.
Hello.
Hello, Emma. Hi.
I really shouldn't have put that in your head.
I know. Now I'm just like specifically not asking how you are. Although this morning when you came in, I was super busy. I had a lot of reading to do, so I didn't really get a chance to ask you, how are you?
I'm well. Yeah, normally we chat a little bit, but Sam had a lot of reading.
Today I was under it.
Yeah.
I was under the gun.
I had a nice Mother's Day. All that, everyone vaxxed, had a little get together. Things starting to just feel a little bit more normal.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
And presumably, and we should just reiterate, you're not a mom.
I am not a mom, but
you were celebrating.
I was with my beautiful, amazing mother.
Oh, well, that is good for you.
Yes.
I spoke to my mom. Also,
how's she doing?
Beautiful, amazing. Yeah, hanging in there. She's doing well. I think she had a nice Mother's Day.
That's good.
All right. And I hope the same for you moms out there and your moms out there. Let's get into this. As you know, there have been multiple either legislation in the works or passes of laws in multiple Republican states to suppress the vote, particularly in the wake of Joe Biden's victory and the Democrats sort of eking out control of the Senate. We saw it in Georgia. We're going to see it in other places, North Carolina. We're going to see it in other states. But the big one is Texas now. And Many people have said this is a return to the Jim Crow era. That was an era marked by essentially suppression of the vote, particularly of black people. Sometimes they would also suppress the vote of poor white people as an ancillary to the agenda of suppressing the vote of black people. Some people would argue that these early on, these former plantation owners had no problem, or I should say plantation owners had no problem coming out of Reconstruction of suppressing the vote of poor whites as well. But it was very much targeted towards black people. And we've heard, it is ridiculous, the concept that you're hearkening back to Jim Crow. Here's an exchange between Texas State Representative Rafael Anchia from the 103rd District in Texas to Briscoe Cain, a sponsor and a writer, I think, of this Texas voter suppression bill.
Yes, and a colorful figure in Texas politics, right? He's been in headlines before.
And so here is that exchange where Briscoe Cain sort of goes to a learning annex.
What was your motivation for using that term purity at the ballot box? Because that's a specific set of words that has a lot of meaning in state history.
You may have figured it out by now. I think as a legislative body, just as Congress should, they should be looking for their authority from their charter, from the thing that gives them power. And so when we're looking at what authorizes us, right, the sovereign people of the state of Texas who delegated their authority through the Constitution, we then should look to the Constitution and say, what gives us authority to do anything on this issue? And that's the provision that does that. And so that would be why.
Did you look at the history before using that word?
No. The only thing, if we were to have a discussion, maybe over some coffee or a drink, I could go into the details of Article 1 really well. I've read the debates in the journals of the Convention of 1875 on that for that thing, but I'm not familiar with the one.
You may have missed it then.
Article 6.
And this would have been very obvious, I think, to anybody who looked at that language. And that provision was drafted specifically to disenfranchise black people, black voters, in fact, following the Civil War. Did you know that?
No, I'm sorry to hear that.
And are you familiar with white primaries?
We've heard and read of such thing. I'm glad
have you read about those?
It's a disgusting thing. Yes.
Did you realize that purity of the ballot box language in the Texas Constitution gave rise to all white primaries?
No, I didn't.
And did you know that this purity at the ballot box justification was also used during the Jim Crow era to prevent black people from voting?
No, those are troubling things. I didn't know that was their
Did
reason.
you know that in states across the country that penal disenfranchisement schemes were put in place, including in Texas, as far back as 1845, to effectively lock African American people out of the political process? Are you aware of this history?
I wasn't aware of any kind of malicious intent in the use of that term.
Okay.
And the reason it was used is I looked at the Constitution because I believe our authority is derived from the people, and that's why.
Gentlemen's time's expired.
Oh, painful. I mean, so many of these libertarian adjacent people are just kind of overgrown, attempts at history nerds, but not really understanding history, just kind of using history as a cudgel in order to appear smart or achieve specific ends or narrow protections. It
is, though, fascinating how they're attracted to the same words, sort of like, this seems fitting. And we do have in Texas, I think there's an ongoing case of prosecuting an African-American woman for voting. Crystal Mason, right? I mean,
I believe you're right. I could be.
I think her case is under review. Yeah. I think, but at the moment, but there it is. I mean,
That's the guy who threatened Beto O'Rourke with an AK-47. If you remember,
That
on
little kid-looking guy.
Yeah, he
Jeez.
got his Twitter account suspended because it was like, if you come for my guns, I'll be meeting you with a whatever.
Great.
So just to give an overall picture of the dude.
Unbelievable.
He seemed very, very tough.
But that moment notwithstanding, this is what's going to happen in Texas, and it's happening in as many Republican states around the country that they can get. And now, Democrats are scrambling to figure out how they're going to deal with this. We will talk to someone over the next week or so about that very same topic. But first, we got to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment with Cory Doctorow, author, activist, journalist. The question of how to destroy surveillance capitalism. We'll be right back after this. Hey, folks, it's spring again. Well, I guess, right? It's spring. It feels a little chilly. Anyways, a lot of people doing spring cleaning, but there's a lot of like change in the air right now, obviously, as we sort of like get to at least the other side of the pandemic, not necessarily the end at this point, but how about a change that makes you feel super comfortable? Brooklinen. Brooklinen was started to create beautiful, high-quality home essentials that don't cost an arm and a leg. And I got to say, they have been extremely successful at it, at least in terms of like what they've done to my home essentials. All of my sheets now, well, I am almost there.
You've almost achieved.
I almost achieved
100% Brooklyn.
Pure Brooklinen, right. Exactly. They work directly with manufacturers, so they basically have luxury sheets, but without the luxury price tag. Has something for every one of your comfort needs. They have sheets, which I've spoken about quite a bit. They got two different types, like the sort of classic crisp ones that I like, the all cotton. And then they have these other ones that are a little bit more soft, and that's not so much for me. But although the cotton ones I find incredibly soft. But they also have towels that are plush and absorbent. They have cozy robes. They have loungewear that is comfy. Apparently you're a fan of.
I'm a big fan of loungewear.
I don't have any time to lounge, so that doesn't happen. But I also have bath mats, which I quite like. There's a reason why Brooklyn has over 75,000 five-star reviews and counting. Their customer service is a dream to work with if you ever have an issue. Like I say, I am all in on the Brooklinen. I've got it with my sheets, my pillowcases. I've got it with my duvet. Very excited about that.
You gotta say it like that.
I don't know. I'm just excited that I have a duvet.
Right. It makes you,
Yep. And I got my bath mats. I got my towels. I don't wear a robe. If I did, it would be Brooklyn, but I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
I don't have any time for that.
No time for a robe.
Folks, give yourself the comfort refresh you deserve and get it for less at Brooklinen. Go to brooklinen.com, use the promo code Majority Report. You get $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. That's Brooklinen, BROOKLINEN.com. Enter promo code Majority Report for $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. That's brooklinen.com, promo code Majority Report. Also, today's episode of Majority Report is brought to you by Season 2 of the podcast Blowback. It's exclusively available on Stitcher Premium. You'll recall Season 1 was a critically acclaimed retelling of the Iraq War by Brendan James and Noah Colwyn. They had John Benjamin on there as a little special guest,
no way.
Voicing Saddam.
Yeah.
Season 2 of Blowback presents the unlikely story of the Cuban Revolution. America's Cold War crusade brings the world to a nuclear-tipped showdown between the Kennedy brothers, Fidel Castro, the Soviet Union, the CIA, and the Mafia. It's co-hosted by Brendan James and Noah Colwyn. Season 2 is a 10-part account of how the United States tried and failed to thwart the creation of a socialist government less than 100 miles to its south. I'm super excited to dig into this. You may or may not know, but I helped my ex-wife with a documentary that she did on the photographers of the revolution, or at least some of them were photographers of the revolution. Castro realized that Cuba was largely illiterate, tell the story of the revolution in pictures. So I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah.
We visited the Bay of Pigs, all that.
Wow.
Yep. To listen now and get a free month of Stitcher Premium, go to Stitcher.com/premium and enter the promo code majority when you select a monthly plan. That's Stitcher.com/premium, promo code majority. And lastly, I need to get back into this, actually. This just reminded me. Wouldn't it be great if there were a pocket-sized guide that helped you sleep, focused, act, and be better? Yes. Well, there is. And if you have 10 minutes, Headspace can change your life. Headspace is your daily dose of mindfulness in the form of guided meditations. That's an easy-to-use app. It is one of the only meditation apps advancing the field of mindfulness and meditation through clinically validated research. There are 25 published studies on Headspace benefits, 600,000 five-star reviews, and over 60 million downloads. Need some help falling asleep? Yes. Overwhelmed? Yes. I'm sorry. I'm taking my personal inventory.
Right.
Headspace has wind down sessions and 3-minute SOS meditations. There are even meditations for kids. Headspace works on your schedule, anytime, anywhere. I have to say that, like, sometimes I fall out of the habit of using this, but when I'm in it, it really is helpful. I use it when I walk.
Yeah.
And
my best friend, just anecdotally, is a psychologist, and she has recommended Headspace to a bunch of people, and just was really excited when I told her that. And she's brilliant, that they were a sponsor of the show. So someone you can trust who's saying it's good.
There you go.
Yeah. If you don't trust Sam, why would you?
Well, I would trust a psychologist over me.
Right. Exactly. That's the point.
I use it when I'm walking, but I'm going to start introducing it into the sleep thing. That I've got to do.
Yeah.
You deserve to feel happier, and Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/majority. That's headspace.com/majority for a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. This is the best deal offered right now. Go to headspace.com/majority today. Check it out, folks. Don't forget, you can support this program by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Want to welcome to the program author, activist, journalist, proprietor of the blogs Crap Hound and Pluralistic, and author of one of his more recent books, although he has a fiction out, a novel entitled Attack Surface, How to Destroy Surveillance Capitalism. Cory Doctorow, thank you so much for joining us. Real pleasure. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Hi, it's nice to see both of you.
Hi, Cory.
That is the coolest backdrop.
What a bookcase.
It's not a backdrop. It's just, my office.
The coolest.
There's a reason my vanity domain is craphound.com.
There you go. Awesome. So excited to talk to you. I've been reading your stuff for ages, and you're one of the best on Twitter too, I should say.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
All right, but I want to get into this surveillance capitalism. I haven't had a chance to read your latest novel, but so will you just, for the sake of folks who haven't been following sort of the development of this, I guess, perspective, what is surveillance capitalism?
Well, I have to start by saying that I am a critic of the idea of surveillance capitalism, that that while I can present what I think the advocates of the hypothesis have, that it's not mine. So Shoshana Zuboff and many others advance the idea that big tech is telling the truth when they tell advertisers that because they've gathered all this data on us, they can manipulate our opinion and they can manipulate our behavior. So they tell that to political parties, and they say to Robert Mercer, if you want people to vote for Brexit or Trump, we know how to reach them. We have the big 5 personality type profiles and all kinds of stuff that I think of as kind of modern phrenology that we can use to influence people's behavior. And basically, it's the idea that big tech made a mind control array to convince your nephew to buy a fidget spinner, and then Robert Mercer stole it and used it to make your uncle a QAnon racist. And I think that the majority of claims about mind control, in fact, all of them, from MK Ultra to pickup artist to Rasputin, they've all been either self-delusion or they've been a deliberate con job. And certainly when big tech tells an advertiser we're really good at convincing people to do stuff, you can see how that's pretty self-serving, right? They're not neutral observers of their own capabilities. So it is true that people have become more conspiratorial. And it is true that big tech companies exercise a lot of control over our life. But I situate both of those phenomena in monopoly. That, you know, if you're worried that Facebook has figured out how to convince 0.38% of the people they expose to a non-consensual psychological intervention to vote that more than they would have expected to, which is their one big peer-reviewed influence study, you should be really concerned about the fact that, like, Google is just the only place we ask for answers. And all of our friends are engaged in mutual hostage taking on Facebook, because if you want to reach them, you have to join. And if they want to reach you, they have to join. And we should be worried about the fact that there's only one place to buy apps, right? That Apple has got 100% control, not 0.38% control, but 100% control over where you buy your apps. And, you know, all of that just boils down to monopoly. And, you know, as we see monopolies become more prevalent in every industry, we see our policymakers failing to address their harms. And so people lose faith in institutions. You know, when the FDA says, oh, the vaccines are safe, people go, okay, but you also told us the opioids were safe. And now we know you told us the opioids were safe because very rich people had undue influence over you and they got off scot-free with starting an opioid epidemic. Maybe we won't believe you. Now, I think vaccines are safe, but I don't think it's wrong to say, well, the FDA has been getting it wrong, as have our other institutions, mostly because monopolies have been exercising undue influence over them. And so, you know, if we're going to start with reclaiming our self-determination, let's do it by busting trusts, not by trying to fend off the mind control rays.
Right. And so we should say, full disclosure, we've been trying to get Zuboff on for a long time. We just kept having crossed things. But broadly speaking, she sees it as a sort of an end run, like an end run around capitalism on some level, as opposed to a problematic feature of capitalism. I mean, I think that's a fair thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. She calls it a rogue capitalism. So, you know, people who believe in markets, you know, all the way back to Adam Smith, they say, look, we can't build a computer so big that it can figure out who should get what. The thing that we have that computes that is a market where lots of people make decisions about what they're going to buy and how much they're willing to pay. And then producers respond. And then that produces these allocations that we call efficient. Whether or not you believe in that, you know, if you thought that producers were actually able, rather than to make you an offer that you can refuse or not refuse, instead they could just brainwash you into taking whatever they tell you to get, you could see how the market would break down. And I think that Zuboff has more faith in markets than I do. I think that she wants to rescue markets from what I think of as a pretty inevitable conclusion of unregulated capitalism, which is monopolies, regulatory capture, and the subversion of the public interest in the service to the parochial needs of giant companies.
And I just want to reiterate, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves as we sort of unwind this, but you cited that study, the peer-reviewed study about Facebook and its influence on getting people to vote. It was a very small number, a percentage, as you suggested.
Yeah, sure.
The problem is that Facebook, when you apply that number to an enormous number of people, that becomes a real number, particularly when we're looking at the past two presidential elections, where the difference between winning and losing in 2 or 3 states was literally, under 6 figures. And so when you're applying 0.05% to millions upon millions of voters, it can be a big deal. And so that gets sort of the clue of this. All right. So let's talk about the notion of of the relationship. Let's just back up a little bit as we walk into the sort of the problem of the concentration here. Give folks a sense of what is happening when we talk about these big tech companies. What's happening in terms of data and info? How is this being sort of consumed and utilized by these companies?
Well, the companies do have a lot of data on us. That's for sure. And they have a lot of reach. You mentioned that Facebook has a lot of scale. And you're right. If you really do think a 0.38% difference is important, when you multiply it by 2.6 billion Facebook users, there are, other remedies, right? Which is to make Facebook have fewer than 2.6 billion users, right?
Exactly.
Merger scrutiny, breakups, so on. the companies, they use the data to target us. That's for sure. And targeting itself, the ability to find people who hold widely dispersed but not concentrated views is a mixed bag. If you want to ask how it is that people who think of their gender as a binary or as a non-binary proposition rather than as a binary were able to find each other and talk to each other and make common cause and eventually become more public about this belief and shift our discourse. A lot of that has to do with the ability to find people who have views that are not widely held and that are not concentrated in any one place. You can't just stick a billboard up and say, do you feel this way? And everyone who drives past that billboard will be likely to be well targeted to you. It's also how people who have other minority views, hard to find views, like I want to buy a refrigerator, can be found. This is why big tech likes it, because the median person buys one or fewer refrigerators in their whole life. So it's a very hard problem. And it's also good for finding people who have views that we are less favorable to, like I would like to carry a tiki torch through the streets of Charlottesville chanting Jews will not replace us, right? So it's kind of a mixed bag. But what's really dangerous about this is not how they use it, although there are some really serious dangers like digital redlining. So for example, helping financial companies illegally target minority communities for discriminatory, high-priced financial products, right? That's definitely a harm we see today. But breaches, right? It's what happens when they lose control of that data. Facebook just lost control of 500 million user accounts. Experian just lost control of every US data account. The Office of Personnel Management a few years ago lost all 23 million records of every American who'd ever applied for a classified clearance, which included everything that could be used to blackmail them that you have to disclose, as well as their fingerprints and lots of other biometrics. So, that'll be really easy to fix. Just change your family so your mom isn't addicted to heroin and get new fingerprints, and whoever stole that data won't be able to use it to victimize you. So that's the real problem, I think, is that it aids criminals and spies and bad people, and to a lesser extent marketers, to do bad things, many of which are illegal.
We should also say, though, and I think that it also helps authoritarian regimes and also, would-be authoritarian regimes. I mean, if you look at if you look at like what ICE has been doing, but also other agencies in the U.S. government, they get around warrants and other sort of safeguards that we have to collect this data by just going out and buying it from these companies, essentially.
You're putting your finger on a really important split in monopoly enforcement. So there have been junctures in our lives where we've seen large companies do really bad things, and we said, well, the way that we're going to prevent you from doing those bad things is by allowing you to continue to exist, but putting limits on how you do them. So, AT&T was a monopolist for a century, and we kept putting these conduct remedies saying, stop doing that. And what that does is it creates these big stakeholders, right? These government stakeholders who rely on these companies to solve the problems they created. So, when it was time to break up AT&T in the 50s, the Pentagon weighed in and said, no, you can't break them up. We need them to prosecute the war in Korea. And the same thing happened with the data collection, right? With when the Church Commission and the big hearings took place in the 70s on collection by the credit bureaus, there was lots and lots of concern that they had been used for nefarious purposes. But also there was this sense that the FBI was going to have its own collection limited. And so intelligence agencies and police agencies briefed to have the firms allowed to continue to gather data on us, because then they could use them as a kind of private sector adjunct to their own data collection capability. And that's why, rather than destroying the big data collection agencies in the 70s, we instead turned them into these regulated quasi-monopolies. And today we see that dynamic playing out again, where Ring is this surveillance doorbell that Amazon will sell you, and they provide it as an off-the-books, warrantless video surveillance grid to law enforcement. They've partnered with 4,000 government agencies across the US to secure Ring footage, and they count on those agencies to go to bat for them whenever anyone says, hey, maybe we should limit the way that we conduct street level surveillance without any kind of democratic accountability or oversight. It's this fusion of the public and the private, where the things the public sector isn't allowed to do are accomplished by the private sector, and the laws that might threaten the private sector are defended by the public sector. And so you end up with the worst of all worlds.
Do you present this as an antitrust issue of breaking up monopolies because nationalizing these platforms would, I mean, have in essence the same surveillance effect with the powers of the massive platforms? Breaking them up is the only way, I guess, in your thesis to disperse that power?
Yeah, although I get there through a kind of more nuanced view, which, they this idea that like all families are happy in the same way, but everyone is unhappy in its own way. Every tech monopoly or every monopoly in every sector forms through the same forces, right? Companies buy their competitors and do anti-competitive things, and that's how they form. But reversing anti-competitive mergers is different in every industry because every industry has different technical capabilities. In Australia, they laid all their rail at different gauges so that because each state had a would-be rail baron that wanted to control the country's rail system, and no one's ever figured out how to solve that. 150 years later, they've tried 300 designs for multi-gauge rail carriages. None of them work. They're just ripping up rail now, thousands of kilometers of rail. That's not how it works in tech, right? If you have billions and billions of Microsoft Office documents that are locking people into Microsoft's operating system platform, Apple can just reverse engineer those file formats and make the iWork suite with Pages and Numbers and Keynote that can read and write those file formats, right? We can just do it in software. So I advocate for, as a part of the solution, to re-enable the kind of interoperability, the ability of one new entrant to the market to connect to an existing market firm's products and services as a way to whittle away at their power. When Facebook started, it had this big problem, which is that everyone was using MySpace, which was owned by this, rapacious Australian billionaire Rupert Murdoch. He wasn't going to let them go. And so rather than organizing everybody leave MySpace and join Facebook Day next Wednesday, Mark Zuckerberg gave everyone a tool that would let them read and write their MySpace messages from Facebook. So they could choose Facebook, but not leave behind their MySpace friends. When companies like Power Ventures tried to do that to Facebook to make their own Facebook front end that would let you combine your Facebook messages with messages from other services, Facebook sued them into a radioactive crater. So what we need to do is restore some of that interoperability that gave us Apple's alternatives to Word, that gave us Facebook as an alternative to MySpace, that gave us Unix and all of its flavors, including the ones that we see in our phones. Both iOS and Android are based on this. That interoperability whittles away at the power of the tech giants, and it gives us the political space to advocate for more muscular remedies like breakups, like merger scrutiny, like all the stuff that we should be doing to create a long-term solution to these problems.
I want to get back to that adversarial compatibility, that concept, and the forced interoperability that you write about. Let me just jump back a little bit to when we were talking about the data and info. The other dynamic that goes on here is I sign up for Facebook and I click off some I agree to their terms of service, which are massive, and I never read, and I wouldn't, and if I did. What they can do with my data and whatnot, it's a one-way relationship here, right? Will you talk about that dynamic and how this also leads to their sort of aggregation of power, and then eventually want to make my way back to the forced interoperability, because that is a big part of the antitrust solution for something like this, and also preventing them. When you had given that example, I thought they were just going to go in and buy it as opposed to sue, but it's almost the same thing.
Sure. And they've done both. Mark Zuckerberg very unwisely wrote a memo to his colleagues saying, we got to go buy Instagram because everyone who hates Facebook is joining Instagram. We have to make sure they can't choose to live outside of my judgment as the sole arbiter of their social lives. You're right that it's not a two-way street, that Facebook and the other big tech companies, when you sign up for them, you click this like sprawling garbage novella of legalese that says, by being dumb enough to sign up for a Mark Zuckerberg service, you agree that he's allowed to like come over to your house and punch your grandmother and wear your underwear and make long distance calls and eat your leftovers. And there's very little law regulating what goes on in those contracts, whether or not they're enforceable. In particular, there's very little there are very few areas in which binding arbitration clauses are not enforceable, and that means that as soon as you click I agree, you give up your right to sue if they harm you, and instead you have to see a corporate judge that they pay and who is nevertheless meant to be somehow impartial and to choose among you in that way. So, there are lots of really serious harms that arise from that. And they say, look, you're agreeing to it, and even if you don't explicitly agree to it, there's an implied agreement, and all this data that's streaming off of your device when it gives up your location, either because they're in your device's operating system or because the apps were built with tools that they made that exfiltrate that data. All of the data that you throw up that they then gather in and make use of and sell access to and so on. They say that they got that fair and square. But if you turn around and do the same thing to them, like say you were to scrape your own data, right? The data that they have now assembled for you, and you were going to say you were going to get it back out of their service, they'll call you a thief, right? They'll call you a lawbreaker. And a good example of that that's going on right now is that NYU, the engineering school there, has this project called Ad Observer and Ad Observatory. And Ad Observer is a browser plugin you can install if you're a Facebook user, and it takes a snapshot of every ad that Facebook shows you, and it puts them in this big repository called Ad Observatory, where accountability journalists and researchers go, and they check Facebook's homework, because Facebook says that it's blocking paid political disinformation and it's labeling political ads, and they find out whether or not Facebook is honest. And Facebook says, we are allowed to gather all the data that you expose to us. But when you gather the data we expose to you, you are violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which is a law that Ronald Reagan passed, and literally in a panic after watching the movie War Games in 1986. And they say, you're violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And it's potentially a felony. And we are going to stop NYU from gathering this accountability data. This is obviously self-serving. And, it raises this question, why are we letting Facebook decide when it's okay and when it's not okay, when it's a privacy risk and when it's not a privacy risk, to gather snapshots of how Facebook operates? Facebook has disqualified itself from having that role as defender of public privacy, a million times over in every conceivable way. What we really need is a federal privacy law. And one of the reasons we don't have a federal privacy law is Facebook is so vastly profitable that it can lobby against federal privacy laws and still have lots of money left over to give to its shareholders, which we saw, at the state level with Prop 24 in California, where you saw lots and lots of intervention from Facebook and eventually a very neutered proposal for a state privacy law here.
And let's be clear about like what a state, what a federal privacy law would look at. And we should say that, I mean, just off the top of my head, it's one of those things that, like, you can imagine this Supreme Court in particular saying this is an infringement upon the freedom of contract, et cetera, just like, like child labor law is a infringement upon the freedom of contract. But putting that aside for a moment, like what would a federal privacy law look like? And to be clear, like, there is all of the things that we're going to start talking about as we start talking about solutions are meant to have knock-on effects that are specific, right? Like, it's not just a question of, I could be someone who says, like, I don't care what Facebook has. I like them to send me, like, they know I like Japanese ice shaver things, and I want that. But that's not the ultimately the point of something like this. It is to inhibit them from doing all the knock-on things.
Sure, it's about ensuring not an inhibition of it, but of a legitimate consensual regime. Facebook argues that that by clicking I agree on an agreement that they know no one's ever looked at. In fact, the UK Competition and Markets Authority published a report last summer. And one of the things they said is, like, how do you evaluate the success of your features? What kind of testing do you do when you roll out a new feature to help people engage more with the platform? And Facebook has this whole giant framework to determine whether or not a feature is any good. And they said, how much of that do you apply to your privacy policy to make sure that people read and understand your privacy policy? Like, is it anyone's job to make sure that everyone actually reads the privacy policy and agrees to it and understands it? They're like, well, no, we do none of that. We have zero statistics. We don't know who looks at it. We don't know how long they look at it. To the extent that we've ever gathered that data, we see that people look at a 20,000 word document for 10 seconds. Like they clearly, like, it's just a fiction, this fiction of consent. So right now, because you can operate on the fiction of consent, if you're thinking about like a product design board meeting where someone at Facebook is sitting down to decide what to do, and the product designer says, I've got this great idea. We'll non-consensually harvest all of this data and use it in ways that we don't have consent for, and we'll paper it over with like an I agree interrupter that you have to click on in order to continue to, talk to your racist uncle. The other people in the room will be like, all right, what's the profit projected from that? Okay, I see. And what's the negative side? Well, there's no negative side apart from maybe some reputational damage long after I collect my annual bonus. We're good, right? Let's go ahead and do it. Now imagine if instead every use of that data required explicit, meaningful consent. Like you had to, this is how GDPR works in Europe. You'd have to break down that use into a plain language question. Are we allowed to do this? It would have to default to no, right? You'd have to slide it over to yes. And you have to ask each question separately. So if you want to do 100 things with my data, you have to get me to slide it over to yes and click OK 100 times. Well, I think everyone in the boardroom is going to go, oh yeah, no one's going to use this service, right? The total number of users for our service will be 0. And we're going to really alarm a lot of people about what else we might be doing with their data. Let's not make that product at all. So we start by saying, let's have meaningful consent. And then the other half of this is let's enforce that meaningful consent with a private right of action. So the California law, the CCPA that passed in the 2020 election by ballot initiative, only works if our attorney general or district attorney decides to take up your case. And that's great if you're like pale, male, and stale like me, and you got a lot of political juice and some Twitter followers. You might be able to make a lot of noise when there's something bad that happens to you. But if you're someone who has no political power, it's really unlikely you're going to get the state AG to take up your case, right? We see this over and over again whenever you have a regime without a private right of action. So that's got to be the other half. And then finally, we need monetary damages and legal fees. So it needs to be the case that if a company harms you, that you can collect statutory damages and that your lawyer can get made whole for the work that they do, so that the other side can't win just by dragging out the legal proceedings until you run out of money. Because the longer they drag out the legal proceedings, the more they owe your lawyer when it's all done.
And just to be clear, this is, what you're talking about is like sort of what could ultimately be like mass torts, where, you have this incentive for tort lawyers to get involved and start going after these companies. So that's one sort of like, that is one direction of the attack on the sort of mass money and power that these companies have, and their outsized money and power. What would be so where do you hit from an antitrust perspective? Where like what would that look like in terms of like inhibiting? Because this has to do with the concentration and the network effects, right? And then of course their ability to go and we're going to buy Instagram. Yeah, we're not going to worry about them. We're just going to buy them, and that's it.
So, I mean, these companies, to be clear, they are mostly acquisition companies. They're not really invention companies. Google has made 1.5 successful products in its history. It made a really good search engine and a pretty good Hotmail clone. Everything else that they made internally has crashed and burned. They have 0 internal successes. And every success they have besides those 2 products is something they bought, whether that's their entire ad tech stack, their server management tools, Android, YouTube. The whole thing is acquisition driven. And 40 years ago, before the Reagan era, we were very skeptical of these kinds of mergers. We didn't let companies buy their direct competitors. We didn't let them create these vertical mergers. And we flipped the burden of proof so that if you were going to affect a merger, you had to prove that it wasn't going to be anti-competitive. Starting with the Reagan era and Robert Bork, the disgraced Nixon criminal, we changed the process so that instead it's incumbent on the government to prove that there will be anti-competitive effects of mergers. And the only way to prove that is using these abstruse mathematical models that were perfected at the University of Chicago and that no one except University of Chicago economists understands. And they've effectively, made themselves into a kind of sorceress priesthood where, when the king wants to do something, the sorcerer drags in a goat and sacrifices it and reads the future in its guts and tells you whether the king is right. And, unsurprisingly, the sorcerer always says that his paymaster is doing the right thing. And, anyone who tries to object, they go, oh, look who thinks he knows how to read the guts of a goat. And so I would favor a return to a more muscular form of antitrust, one where the burden of proof is reversed. This is in Senator Klobuchar's proposal. And I'd also return to a more muscular form of antitrust where we expanded the scope of harms that you could articulate to block a merger beyond consumer welfare harms, right? Higher prices, and instead incorporated social harms, right? Just the very idea that monopolies gather too much power into a few private hands that make them unaccountable and make them deprive them of any kind of checks on their judgment and their folly, and you know, those in combination would go a long way. I think the antitrust scrutiny we're seeing right now of Google and Facebook and Apple in lots of places, as well as Amazon, Europe, the UK, and the US, is very welcome. It's hard to state how seismic an advance it is, and it's very easy to be cynical about it. Just like with the Biden support for a vaccine waiver, I know that there are lots of people who I have a lot of time for who are like, no, it can't possibly be true. And I understand where they're coming from, right? Because, you know, Lucy and the football and all. But I've spent 20 years watching the US trade representative be the most slavish water carrier for corporate interests, especially pharma. And if the USTR had sprouted tentacles, I would be less surprised than I am today at the statements that the USTR has made on pharma. These are really big, giant, fantastic shifts, and they represent a real change in our political consensus. And it's a change that I think will spread beyond tech. You know, there are lots of people who are angry about monopolies and don't know it. You know, if you're a pro wrestling fan who's sad because your favorite wrestler is begging for pennies on GoFundMe to die with dignity, you may not appreciate that the reason that that's happening is that Vince McMahon bought all the wrestling leagues, reclassified his employees as contractors, and took away their health insurance. And if you're angry that there's only 2 major brewers or 1 major eyeglass vendor, 4 major accounting firms, just a couple of big finance firms, if you're one of those screenwriters who fired your agent from the big 4 talent agencies because they were engaged in wage theft from their clients, or if you're an actor who's pissed off that Disney's no longer paying residuals because they've shifted everything in-house to D+ and they bought their major competitor Fox, you're angry about a monopoly. And just like the ecology movement took people who are angry about owls and people who are angry about the ozone layer and said, hey, you may not understand that like charismatic nocturnal birds and the gaseous composition of the upper atmosphere are actually the same issue, but they are their ecology. Monopoly has the power to weld together a coalition that is much larger and more powerful than any coalition we've seen since the Gilded Age, since the trust busting itself.
I couldn't agree with you more. We spent a lot of time on talking about these things, and they are also, I think, to the average person's ears, incredibly boring and lacking the sexiness of what a revolution is to look like. But we are living in the shadow of that. Right. That Reagan shift to the recalculating and what constitutes a monopoly and unfair lack of competition. So, all right. So how do you go? How do you then break them apart? Right. I mean, so if we were to start this antitrust regime going forward, that's pretty self-explanatory. The answer is no, you cannot buy these firms, but they already have a lot, right? Like they've already created such a bar to entry that how do we disaggregate these monopolies?
Well, so we talked a little about interoperability, and I think there's a lot of room there to force them to open up their backends so that competitors can connect to them. We saw parallels to this with the Bell system, where you know they had to open up to third-party long-distance carriers and then local carriers and so on. But it's also very easy to subvert that. You know, in 2012, the Massachusetts voters voted up a ballot initiative to force the automakers to disclose the diagnostic codes that ran over the wired networks in the cars so independent mechanics could serve them, because they were monopolizing repair, which is a big deal. It's not just that they gouge you on repairs. They also get to decide when your car is not drivable anymore and force you to buy a new car. It's what we see everywhere. We see monopolization of repairs as we see this. They're also able to steal a lot of data from you. You know, cars are mobile data acquisition platforms, and that's made possible because they can hide what they're doing because no one except them can actually look under your hood. And so that was passed in 2012, and there was this brief period where we saw a big uptick in independent repair. Independent repair across the board is about 4% of national GDP. It's a really big deal. And FTC just released a new report on how great independent repair is and how the lack of independent repair disproportionately hurts people of color and poor people. But right after 2012 and the ballot initiative, the big three automakers retooled their cars so that all the useful data went over the wireless interface. And so now you had this mandate that said they had to tell you all the data that was on the wired interface and nothing was on there anymore. So it's really easy for them to subvert it. And it wasn't until last year, until 2020, that we got another ballot initiative that forced them to disclose what's going on the wireless interface as well. And so you can see that like a regulation itself can't be enough, because if you create this regulation that says you must expose this interface or allow this interoperator, there are lots of ways that you can mess with that so that it becomes useless, and the response is going to be slow, and chances are any penalties you pay will be less than the profits you extract from subverting the rule. But this is where adversarial interoperability or competitive compatibility comes in. I mentioned before that it's always been the case that new tech companies came into existence by making things that plugged into existing tech companies' products and services, whether that's third-party printer ink, or back in the old days, third-party printers for IBM mainframes, or Apple's alternatives to Microsoft Office, or what have you. And that today, we've lost most of that thanks to the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, trade secrecy, non-compete, a whole host of rules that these dominant firms have either enacted or altered through new legal decisions that were very expensively won, so that no one can do unto them what they did unto others. And if we were to restore that, if we were to say as part of our antitrust settlement with these companies, you are no longer allowed to invoke any of these laws against a competitor without the permission of a special master who confirms that you're not using it in an anti-competitive way. It's the kind of thing we do all the time in settlements, right? We just say, look, you've got a special master, it's a third party, it's some academic at a university or something. They're going to decide whether or not you can bring the lawsuit, or whether you're just doing it to accomplish something against the public interest. Well, then you change the equilibrium. Because imagine what would have happened if the big three automakers had switched from wired to wireless. And the response that was enabled in Massachusetts was for some kids from MIT to make a wireless diagnostic tool of their own, a Wildcat tool, a tool that they could sell for $20 to every mechanic in the country and then every mechanic in the world. And that all of those mechanics would suddenly have no reason to ever talk to the big three again when they're doing repair. It could be a gateway to third-party parts. It could be a gateway to alternative warranties, to a whole raft of services and add-ons that would sideline these companies, right? It would basically go from having a managed and predictable form of competition to this unquantifiable risk that could see them turned into an insignificant progenitor, right? An extinct seed to a new industry that looks completely different to the one that they made. I think that in that system, and I've been told by tech executives that given that equilibrium, they would rather toe the line and obey the rules than trigger this guerrilla technological warfare with all comers who want to figure out how to sideline them. So that, I think, is the way that we make a sturdy, effective rule. And what it does is it starves them of monopoly rents. It's like cutting your enemy's supply lines, so that when we go back to pass a privacy law with a private right of action, money damages, legal fee recoupment that requires explicit consent, when we go back to do that, they won't have the windfall profits that they've been getting from all the shenanigans they do with their monopolistic conduct, and we're going to be able to whittle them away one step at a time. We're not going to be able to eat the elephant all at once. You eat the elephant one bite at a time.
I like that image. With no actual elephants are harmed in this
except by Thomas Edison.
Section 230. Ancillarily, what's your perspective on that, and how does that fit into this idea of like taking a little piece out of the elephant to so weaken it and so that at the very least either it gives you the opportunity to slay the elephant, or that the elephant becomes really more of functionally like a big wild boar is a little bit big, but maybe some smaller animal that's not going to dominate the scene.
So I think that the efforts to reform Section 230 are either cynical or mistaken. I think that a lot of people who should know better have gone on to say that we should get rid of it. It's very short. It's very easy to understand. And when you see, sort of the right advocating for the abolition of Section 230, what they mean is, well, we spent 40 years endorsing monopoly, but now the monopolists don't like us. Can we give them a kind of must carry rule so that they won't deplatform Alex Jones, right? And I think that is a foolish thing to get involved in. I mean, the right is sadly mistaken if they think getting rid of Section 230 is going to allow them to have runaway conspiracists and calls for violence. It's telling that if you look at the terms of service for Parler and Gab and Trump's new blog, that they all say, like, if you do a thing that is illegal or that we think is illegal or that we think might get us in trouble or that just makes us sad, we're going to delete it, right? They all have that policy, right? And then, progressives who are like, well, maybe this will get the tech firms to put their thumbs on the scales for better speech, I think ignores everything we know about how the tech firms do moderation. What we know from making tech firms responsible for bad acts by their users, to preemptively police bad acts by their users, is that it disproportionately affects people who have little political juice, who can't call up the firms and say, your filter or your moderator made a bad call, sort it out. And so long before there was deplatforming of Alex Jones, there was deplatforming of Black Lives Matter, and there was deplatforming of anti-pipeline activists, and there was deplatforming of trans activists and drag queens, people who didn't want to use their real names on Facebook. Cambodian dissidents are routinely deplatformed because the Cambodian dictator has a whole team that goes around and finds Cambodian dissidents who aren't using their real name because they don't want to be picked up and tortured and murdered, and gets them kicked off the service. So, when we create a system of content removal that asks the tech platforms not to decide whether or not something is not good for their bottom line or not good for their other users or whatever, but instead, like, whether it is a potential criminal matter that could land them in hot water, they just err on the side of caution. And erring on the side of caution means suppressing anyone who says anything against the status quo. And that's not going to be primarily people you agree with. It's going to be people whose rights you want to see defended and whose voice you want to see heard.
Just to be clear, and I said this, as Section 230 is a provision that essentially says a digital publisher or platform, they would say not a publisher, a platform is not responsible for what users leave in terms of comments or videos, in terms of, beyond sort of roughly speaking.
I would say it a little differently. I would say that whoever posted is responsible for it. That's what 230 says. So if you're a company and you post something to your platform, you're responsible for it. If you're a company and someone else posts it to your platform, they're responsible for it.
Okay, fair enough. And so what? Those two big measures that you've talked about, the interoperability and the going forward, the inability to sort of just run amok with antitrust, hopefully will shrink these beasts going forward. I think we've covered it all. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour or two about...
Well, there was one thing I did want to add, if that's okay. Yes. Briefly, we talked at the very start of this about the effect size of that Facebook study and whether, when they did it to 60 million people, they got 200,000 or whatever, 300,000 people to vote who wouldn't have, and our votes on our elections turn on less than that. And that's true, but no precinct turns on a vote that is 0.38% closer. Right. So they took 60 million people across all precincts, and in each individual precinct, they saw 0.38% effect size. So I would say that it's still not a big deal. And even if you think it is, there's every reason to think that the next time they did it, the effect size would be smaller, not bigger. One thing we know about humans is we adapt to stimulus. Like, I'm in my office right now, but it's also the garage and also the laundry room. And I have a little note over my camera that says, turn off the washing machine, because I always forget, even though it's loud as hell, because after 5 seconds, I don't hear it. And so every time I go on a camera, I have to turn it off. people are become ad blind, they become deaf, they become washing machine deaf, and they stop reacting to stimulus over time. And so I think that even then, it's probably not something we need to worry about.
Fair enough. How to Destroy Surveillance Capitalism and the novel Attack Surface, which is actually the third in a sort of, I guess, a series.
The Little Brother books with a new introduction by Edward Snowden. Cyber thrillers about young people fighting authoritarian regimes with technology to defend their fundamental freedoms and the freedoms of people around them in a technological world.
We will put links to all of those at majority.fm. Cory, Doctorow, thank you so much for your time today. Real pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on. It was lovely to see you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, folks, going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to wrap things up. Just got a IM from MSNBC shill Sam Seder. Sam, how do we convince the left to care about monopoly? People either are ignorant of it or they think it's like a side issue. I mean, over the past 6 years, maybe, I don't know how many authors that we have had who have written books about monopoly. We have spoken about monopoly many, many times. I think we just keep doing more of that and hope that others do too. It is the analogy of not eating the elephant. With all due respect to the elephant, it's just an analogy. Eating the elephant all at once. You got to take bites out of it to weaken it. That is a very, very important principle that I think people should understand.
I would say frame it more less as reform and more as cutting the supply lines like he did.
Indeed.
Right.
All right, folks. With that said, we will see you tomorrow if you are leaving us on the Peacock app. But if you are not and you're staying with the show, then good for you.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll still be here. And we get a special guest. Wait, why do I keep thinking today is Tuesday?
I know. This is it feels like a Monday too.
Total Monday.
Total Monday. Sam's been, now like the second time you told me we're doing something that we're doing on Tuesday.
Correct.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, let me just get it out of my system.
Yep.
Nomi comes on in the fun half of the show. Nomiki Konst. And
Brave. You said the full name.
I did. I don't know if it's I hope I'm not like ruining a secret, but she does her show Tuesday through Friday at 3 p.m. And on her channel, she's now adding a new show on Mondays. She's not doing it. Her buddy Arun Chaudhary is doing it, and he's going to join her tomorrow. Come on the show.
That's going to be great. Fun little Tuesday.
Two for Tuesday.
Right, there you go.
There you go.
Wow, you just came up with
bringing in my radio stuff. Folks, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Poggers, says MIDI Doctors on the IM. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show. Get Cory Doctorow on as just the Monday guest. That's just the Monday guest.
Right.
You get a lot of shows. That's their guest for the week.
Yeah.
Or for the month. That's just this week on the show already. Just a little bit of a taste of like what we got going this week.
You're doing spoilers for days today.
Yeah. Why not?
I guess.
On Wednesday, Jeremy Scahill.
I know. I'm so pumped about that.
Damn. Big
Next
week.
Heather McGee. We've got, It's unbelievable.
Wow, we have Heather McGee on.
Wait, maybe that's not
That's
I'm
like 2 weeks
off.
from now. What is wrong with you? But I am excited about Heather McGee.
I feel like just sort of mentally, like I'm dropping out of an airplane without a parachute, and like you know, like you spin like one of those like what are those like little?
Got a lot of G-force going, Sam.
No, what is it? Those things that are they on? Not maple trees. I think oak trees. Like the thing that flutter around. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't even know what those are.
Huh?
I thought
Leaves?
Jumping out of an airplane.
Not leaves. They have like a snap. I can't believe I don't know what the name of this is.
Spindle?
No. That is weird. I don't even know what the name. I've seen those things for 50 years as a kid.
You were dropping out of an airplane and
well,
then
and you
you're
spin around like this. You're spinning around.
So
and that's just like
so it's a metaphor
completely
within
untethered.
A metaphor.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm completely untethered. I don't know. I
Needlessly
can't tell which is up or down or left or right at this point in terms of time.
They're called helicopter seeds.
Seed pods. Yeah. Helicopter seeds. That's exactly right.
Right. Wow.
So they.
I wonder what they called them before the helicopter was invented.
Those spinny things. You know what they are. Seed pods. Folks, you can support this program.
Those things.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. You just used to play with them as a little kid.
Right.
Right.
And I never named them.
Why? Why did we play
Somebody
with
called them maple keys. Helicopters, Sam.
Played with dandelions too. Like kids don't know what you had to make use of for toys back then.
It's true. Believe me.
I think at one point I played with fire at like age 8, and I had like burned dead leaves with my friend Elizabeth.
There you go. With a
yeah.
With a magnifying glass?
No, we found matches and we just burned them in the
I burnt my
driveway.
finger with matches. That taught me.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Actually took a lighter and as a kid and pressed it into a bottle to see what would happen and then lit it and my finger caught on fire.
Yeah.
And so I think I don't have any more scars from it. I think I've grown out of it, but
I'm not
good
shocked
story to
that
tell the kids.
The boy version of playing with fire was like more dangerous than my girl version of playing with fire.
Whirly birds and maple keys. Yep.
Whirly birds, that I know.
That's what I used to call them, whirly birds. Folks, the point is, become a member of the Majority Report at jointhemajorityreport.com. We will look into merchandising Majority Report branded whirly birds. So,
I mean,
I said we'll look into it. I'm not promising. You support the free show. You get the fun half. You get the free show free of commercials. Your support, very helpful. We've got a lot of people who have had to end their paying memberships for financial reasons. There's just this weird sort of dynamic that is going on right now where some people are in very dire straits. Other people, they could do their work from home. And so if you're one of those people who have been unaffected by what has been ongoing for over a year now, a serious crisis in terms of jobs, support the show. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10%.
And like the stream, right? That's a way to support the show.
Yeah, like the stream. Yeah, doing all that stuff.
Right.
Leave us a review on iTunes. Like the stream, poggers, and all that stuff. So share our videos.
I like how you listed that as if it was a verb, like an action verb.
It can be a verb.
Like the stream, read a review, do a poggers, right?
I didn't say do a poggers. That
I
would
had
be,
to make it worse.
Yeah, poggify it. Get poggified. So, folks, also don't forget Nomi's show,
Not
3
today,
p.m.
though, right?
The Nomi Key show, not on Mondays, but soon it'll be Aaron's show on Mondays. And Matt. Oh, and tonight I will be on the Ben Burgess show.
Oh,
at 8 p.m. He wants to talk to me about my libertarian debates. I would wish we could bring those back. I wish we get more libertarian callers, but I don't hear from them.
You probably just demolished them.
They'll be
so
back.
thoroughly.
They'll be back. They'll be
Maybe
back.
put some ads out onto libertarian Instagram or something.
You know what? That's a very good idea because it would take like literally one ad and 50 guys would be calling in. And I mean guys.
They
and
know
I
you're
mean,
committed to the free market.
And I
for
mean
advertising.
like 22-year-old guys. It's 18 to 22-year-olds. Matt, what's happening in the Leckian media universe?
If people like that Doctorow discussion, especially the interoperability, we talked with Luke Savage, Jacobin staff writer, about pharma and why we shouldn't be getting like Pfizer tattoos and celebrating the monopolies here, and why why IP is hampering that. So check that out. Patreon.com/leftreckoning and YouTube. Go subscribe on the YouTube channel.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half. 646-257-3920. All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back, back, boy is back, and the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back, boy is back, and the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck 'em. Says what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Yo, we're here. It is the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do a couple of IMs and we'll get into some sound. And of course, we will take some phone calls. Why? Because it's the fun half. Chabruska. I can't pronounce. That's vaguely what the name is. Do you have any horror stories about former bosses?
Me?
I mean, I guess that's for all of us.
I do. Not some I'll say super publicly.
Super publicly? Or publicly? All right. I'll take some that are not as loaded. well, all the Air America people. Mark Green was a lunatic, but this is one from way, way, way back. So I worked at this place called Mr. C's in Harvard Square. I was doing comedy at the time, and I was working as a waiter, and it was in '91, and Mr. C owned the place. Mrs. C worked there. 4 or 5 like C children worked there and ran it, and he was a very gruff guy. But he started taking a liking to me because like Lenny Clark had worked there and he knew I was doing comedy and this and that. And I didn't care. So I was just like, I would just joke around with him. And at one point he puts up a sign that says, workers in Harvard Square are lucky to have jobs because of the recession. And so I put up a sign the next day saying, in light of the economy, there is a movement afoot to unionize wait staff in the Harvard Square area. And they got really pissed at me, but they couldn't. I don't know why they didn't fire me, but they didn't.
Was it illegal?
Huh?
Was it illegal to fire you based on what you were saying?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I had just made it up. I didn't know that there was any type of I just made it up. And I posted it. And on right above his sign, just like, and at one point I said to him, like, I'm going. The war was happening, the Kuwait War.
Yeah. And
I was just bummed about the whole thing. And a buddy of mine who was from Belize was going down to Belize. And so I said, I'm going with you for 3 weeks. And we just like took buses through Mexico into Belize and whatnot down to Guatemala. When I came back, they made me reapply for my job. I was like, I was just here 3 weeks ago.
Did you were you
Yeah, no, they told. I said I was going to go, and I was approved. And the son was mad at me. He was mad at me, very mad.
Well, I mean, you were passive aggressive with the
question on the application. There was one question on this application.
Yeah.
List your work involvement for the past 6 months, and I'm like, dude, it's all here. This is the only place I've been working for the past 6 months. Like, what do you want me to tell you? They're like, well, if you won't fill out the application, you're not getting the job. And I was like, well, then I'm not going to fill out the application.
I have the job.
And that was it. They were just dicks about it.
Yeah.
They were dicks about it. But that wasn't too bad. The worst stuff was at Air America. That's the thing.
No.
I've never had, any type of, long-term job with a boss.
Well, and I also I realized that what I said earlier could have been interpreted that it was Jank. It's not Jank who I'm talking about. No. No. Jank and I have a great relationship.
Matt, you want to talk about what I've done to you here?
No, you're actually the longest boss I've ever had. I'm in your position. All my bosses were very brief. And I don't even remember a lot of their names, to be honest. The best thing about the ones at Old Navy were they were absent a lot of the time. So it's kind of like the worker who's designated manager, but not a real manager. And then you can sort of put your iPod on the speakers and not really look out for theft at all. Just watch DVDs in the fitting room. That's what I did at Old Navy. Anyway, but yeah, no horrible bosses really.
I had a manager at a different restaurant in Harvard Square. John Benjamin and I were working there, and it was like a nice restaurant. And the manager he was wasted all the time.
Yeah.
And I, when I got on a job, I took it really seriously. And I was like, I was annoying. And I would go to the manager and I'd be like,
precocious?
Look, nah, just annoying. And I would say well, listen, I think we can increase efficiency on sitting. And he would get really pissed about it. He didn't like that. Meanwhile, John Benjamin would literally take the plates he would clear plates from one table and go up to another and serve it to them.
Right.
As a joke. And they loved him and they hated me. And we were roommates, Benjamin and I. And then one day I go into work and I'm like, hey, well, I'm not on the schedule. And everybody's like, no one's telling me. And I had been fired. And Benjamin didn't even tell me. He was supposed to tell me and never even told me. So I had to go in. It was super embarrassing.
I will say I worked in an ice cream store, and there was a woman there who used to like make me take time off. She was the manager, and like drive her to KFC to go get chicken. And
that is an abuse of
because I had
power at the.
She was like, she didn't have a car, and I had a car with me. So yeah, that was a little rough.
Up. I was going to put a urinal cake shavings in the planters at that restaurant. But I never did.
That would have meant you would have had to touch the urinal cake.
That's all right. As of one black box, ousting Liz Cheney is reorganizing the seating chart on the Challenger. Jimmy Dore's mansion. Hey, Emma, I hate to break it to you, but it's going to not be a good for your Giants. Joe Judge is Gase 2.0.
That's...
I don't even understand what that means.
Not correct.
Carmelita, how do you judge the performance of Kamala Harris as vice president so far?
Like pretty badly, I would say. What can you say?
What's there on the record except the parliamentarian thing?
Well, also that and her heading down to Latin America. I mean, we haven't seen anything really.
But that's what I'm saying. Of
or
like
Central America,
the two things that she's been visible on, they haven't been. Well, they haven't been good, but I mean, at the same time, what can you expect of her? This is just a ceremonial job.
I mean, we've yet to see anything, really, in some ways. The guy sounds like Bruce McCullough from Kids in the Hall, the purity guy. Zuckerberg better stay away from my underwear. Humbert, how tall are you? Is that me? I am 5'11" and like 3/4. So I say like a Jewish 6 feet. With shoes on, I'm 6 feet. Zephi.
How tall do you think I am? I'm asking you.
I think you are 5'8".
I'm like 5'9", but I might be a little below it. I'm in between 5'8" and 5'9".
Okay, that's I nailed it.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Zephi, Adam Curtis should be the next interview after this. So many common notes with what Doctorow is saying. We've got to get Adam Curtis on. Can we put him on some type of list?
Did you watch the documentary or?
Watched like, 2 or 3 of the episodes, and I get to see more.
Okay.
So let's have him on like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. Maybe on a Friday too. That might be.
Yeah,
good.
That's what I was thinking.
I want to interview the director of that QAnon documentary.
Oh, should. Just
That just reminded me. Yeah.
Just Kafove, with the monopolistic control, aren't we just headed towards some Orwellian version of state capitalism from the right rather than from the left, as in China or USSR? I mean, some people would argue that is what definition of like Italian fascism was, right? It was like this merger of corporate and state apparatus. Apiniva. Cancel culture is when they disqualify your horse on doping allegations. Well, since you brought that up.
Oh, yes.
It really has become like cancel culture is like this sort of catch-all phrase for something I don't like.
Or for someone in public being held accountable for their actions. But in fact, it doesn't even need to be narrowed to someone. It doesn't need to be narrowed to a person. It's just something or
something that's alive,
some breathing entity.
Of course, the irony is
that can be canceled.
It used to apply exclusively to TV shows or to subscriptions or to something that was not at all alive. Now it's just sort of like permeating to all life.
From email lists to animals.
And here is what we're talking about. This is from, of course, Fox News.
Fox News.
Will you run Medina Spirit this weekend in the Preakness? I know you've said that, but they're going to have a meeting tomorrow down there at that race.
No, actually, they're on their way right now. They're in a van. They should arrive this afternoon, and we're definitely planning on running them. I'm going to run 2 horses.
Okay, Bob, here's my understanding. They were going to have the draw today for the Preakness, and they've kicked it back until tomorrow. You have another review. Those results may not be available for several weeks. So the Preakness goes down this weekend. The Belmont is here in New York 4 weeks from now. I don't know if we have final results even before the Belmont is done, but your plan is to race in the Preakness. Is there a chance they may punt and not allow Medina Spirit to run this weekend?
Well, I haven't heard anything officially. They haven't told me anything. I know when Churchill Downs came out with that statement, that was pretty harsh. And I think they had to just, it's, with all the noise going out, we live in a different world now. This America is different. And it was like a cancel culture kind of a thing. So they're reviewing it. I haven't been told anything. We're prepared to run. I can't see them
but under the rules, does your team get to review the results? Or is that left with the horse officials?
No.
Hold on. So I think
Philly, first off, have they been covering horse racing on what's going on here?
So it's a big story that happened yesterday that essentially that horse Medina I'm forgetting what
Medina Spirit
just won the Kentucky Derby. They tested the horse after winning the Kentucky Derby, and there was some sort of drug test that the horse failed. Now, apparently all those horses are drugged up anyway. So the whole culture around horse racing is fairly disgusting to begin with.
It's disgusting. Do the horses know they're racing?
I guess, yeah, right? But I mean, they're very smart animals, but they essentially drug them up. But this horse, by that guy who looks incredibly trustworthy, who owns the horse presumably, was drugged up to too much of a degree or with the wrong amount of substances. It's not entirely clear, but apparently that's cancel culture now.
Wait, who's been canceled?
Medina Spirit, aka his prized horse that's going to make him a shit ton of money when he runs at the Preakness, which is a horse race in Maryland. Now he can't. Now he's upset that Medina Spirit can't win another race for him, win another millions for him. So that's apparently cancel culture now.
I just want to add some context from the New York Times. Mr. Baffert has gained the enmity of rivals who believe he has persistently cheated, suspicions fueled by 30 drug tests his horses have failed over 4 decades, including 5 in the last year or so.
Oh, what a social justice warrior Matlack turns out to be.
I know. Why are you supporting the end of the First Amendment for equine beings? Can we put up Trump's response, though? Because Fox is going to have
nothing like the state intervening between a man and his horse. That is disgusting.
Or a horse and his heroin. Can you look up Donald Trump? Oh, that's not PED, sorry. A horse and his roids. Donald Trump says no. So now even our Kentucky Derby winner, Medina Spirit, is a junkie. This is emblematic of what is happening to our country. The whole world is laughing at us as we go to hell on our borders, our fake presidential election, and everywhere else. No one gives a shit about this. No one cares about the Preakness. No one cares about the Kentucky Derby unless you're a rich white person who bet on it. I like betting. I'm not betting on horses. The whole thing's gross.
Keep that back up. First off,
Mother's Day.
Well, I'm going to look at that in a second, yes. But I don't understand. Is he complaining that our horses have all become junkies or that our society is now branding a horse a junkie?
No, he says even...
The former. He's not defending the guy, I think. He's saying gosh, the horses are even junkies now.
Okay.
Right.
Now, let's go down to this.
So that's maybe a loose Hunter Biden thing.
Happy Mother's Day to all. It will come back bigger and better and stronger than ever before. Don't worry. What Mother's Day has been what? First of all, what would a bigger and better and stronger Mother's Day look like? And is it weaker and smaller? And
it's like flower bouquets for your mother, except you got AK-47s instead of tulips. Biden canceled.
I'm so sad that we don't get to see him on Twitter anymore.
You know what's good, though? If you go back to that Twitter thing, is they've added the functionality where if you click the heart, it goes red. That was not there in the first version that was released to the public. I think that must have upset Trump quite a lot. And now if you click the heart, it shows red.
Oh, you can favor it. That's great.
Well, that's how he knows he's beloved. So again, though, watch Fox is going to have to adjust their narrative on this because Trump is anti-Medina spirit now because he's just one of the derelicts and junkies. He probably came over the Mexican border.
Right.
No, I think that's, if you're reading into it, I think that's the interesting sort of bit in that statement is that, like, I don't know, a lot of the jockeys are not white guys. They might be doping their horses. Border.
Hiding it. Alba Moranted Pebble. Just noticed on Saturday that Uber bought Postmates and is now combining the services. By the way, 180 people will get the sack due to redundancy. Yay, monopoly capitalism. Yeah. Train Boy. Love Cory and glad you had him on. I think he doesn't go far enough when he says if you're angry about X issue, you're angry about monopoly. Monopoly is a natural result of capitalism. Therefore, if you're angry about monopoly, you should be angry about capitalism. Anelli, GDPR most definitely does not default to no. It defaults to yes. I don't know if you don't have it in the U.S., but don't say something that's inaccurate. There you go. All right. Appreciate it. I think maybe he's calling for that, but I'll double check on that. A Square, Sam, not boring at all. Cory confirmed this sense that we all have that these current and still growing monopolies are worse than the early 20th century monopolies. Great chat today and with Digby on Friday. Ghoul Bets. My friend worked for an Apple subsidiary and they were charged with listening to Siri audio. Literally listening to people talking, private conversations. Eesh. Ryan from Chicago. I just got elected to my leadership of teachers union. Your show was a big part of convincing me to become more active. Can I get a shofar? Oh, that's exciting. Keep us updated. Christo, your guest, Cory Doctorow, has a gift for colorful hyperbole on par with Sam's gift for inventive analogies. Thank you.
I think his analogies were pretty colorful and inventive in and of themselves.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough.
Maybe even more so.
Let's not get carried away, Emma. I saw where you were going. I tried to slow you down there, but let's not get carried away.
Yeah, well, I see whose name is on the backdrop. I know where my bread's buttered.
Sam, how do we convince the left? Okay, I did that. Sam's hanging testicle. Thank you. In response to your Glenn midlife crisis tweet, the Vanguard were making fun of your divorce and for being a shit lib. Also, they love Matt Leck, which is he part of the astroturfing of their podcast?
Hell yeah.
Also,
yeah.
Ryan Grimm was on last weekend. You should go on and have a friendly debate.
It doesn't sound so friendly if they're doing personal
Ryan Grimm
attacks.
was friendly to me. Ryan Grimm was on what?
This
the Vanguard?
Vanguard?
Oh, the Vanguard. Oh, the Vanguard. Oh, I see. The show. Oh, I see.
I will never, stop marveling at your ability to not take things like that personally.
Glenn was on his show making fun of my divorce?
No, these other guys. I don't even know. The Vanguard.
I don't know what the Vanguard is.
Right.
I thought
It's
that
a pretty minor interest I am, to be honest.
They are a
No offense to the Vanguard.
podcast. They're a podcast with 11,000 YouTube subscribers and 3,000 Twitter followers.
Oh. Okay. Well, then there you go.
Upstarts.
Up and comers, I think you'd define them.
Well, I look. I mean, I can understand they're making fun of the shit lib thing. I mean, that is pretty par for the course. I'd be curious about them making fun of the divorce. I'm quite happy about the divorce, but that to be honest, part of the reason why I think what's happening with Glenn is some type of midlife crisis is because I've been there and it happened. I think Glenn is a couple of years younger than me, and I think it doesn't necessarily happen at the exact same age, but here he is. He's making upwards $2 million a year, and he probably realizes, and I don't have the same investment in this type of dynamic. He probably realizes that it's mostly behind him, except for the massive amounts of money. And it's possible you could get lucky and somebody could, send him another trove of stuff. But he, and I think that when you're in that situation, making a ton of money, and presumably you should be happy. I mean, I had that problem back in show business when I was very young. I was getting paid an enormous amount of money, and I'm like, what do I do now? But you combine that with where Glenn is in his career. I mean, that could be difficult. And I feel confident in making that speculation based upon where I've been in my life. That's all. I mean, of course.
Okay.
It's not like Glenn himself has been averse to psychoanalysis.
Right. No, I mean,
one of his main modes these days.
Listen, I'm just a humble human container who's had some experiences. That's all. I thought Vanguard was actually like a name for like his front leaning forces on Twitter.
I'm looking at their page now. Yeah, there's a lot of videos just like about our tweets that are like hours long.
Well, I like it. I'll go on that show. MIDI Doctors. Hey, Sam, sad. Daily Remember, tell everyone to hit. No, I mean, look, it's part of the ecosystem. Tell everyone to hit the like button and subscribe. Poggers. Dulce Moce. Dulce de Mochi. Breaking up monopolies is important, but it doesn't change who gets to start these companies in the first place. And I mean ideology as well as race and gender. Right now, if you want to build something with values besides profit motive, you still have to go through VCs who have LPs to worry about. There's little funding infrastructure on the left, so we're going to get more of the same. Well, I think the idea is this, is that the theory goes like this, that when you eliminate people who are not just, when we don't just have a plutonomy, but we also have now a plutocracy, where you eliminate these people who have so much money that they have outsized influence on the political process. Once they are diminished and they don't have a concentration of power, this is the theory anyways. I know people, for your mileage may vary on it. The theory is that once you diminish their political power, the ability for just regular people, forget about left or right, if you were talking about just people who don't have the resources, to influence the political outcomes, gets enhanced. And zero sum, right? And so when they lose that power, it gets dispersed. And, you have movements afoot to we're going to provide bridge loans to employees to buy their family-owned businesses where people want to sell the business, but they don't want to sell it to, let's say a hedge fund or something like this. We're going to provide bridge loans to employees to buy things. You start to get initiatives like that. And then the fact is that any type of change that you want becomes easier when it's the playing field is leveled. I mean, that's just the bottom line. When big interest, you cut down on the monopolies on the healthcare providers, you get a much better shot at getting Medicare for all because they don't have the outsized political influence. And, simultaneously, the ability for average people to raise money for politicians who are not taking corporate money has gone up. Aaron is not cool. When is Piker coming on? I don't know. We got to soon. Craven Moore. Sam, do you think Biden bringing broadband to the rural areas will get them to stop watching Fox and start watching porn? No, but I think it's going to give them a good connection for One America Network. Sam Schmieder. I think the skepticism some on the left have on the focus of monopoly is that in many cases, not necessarily yours or Cory's, that comes along with the idea that monopoly is a perversion of capitalism that can be corrected, rather than a very natural endpoint of capital accumulation. The small firm purism obsessed anti-monopolist is more prevalent in think tanks than in the public at large, but they have a very big and annoying bullhorn.
Well, that was part of my question about, nationalizing versus antitrust as an end goal.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I also think, I was telling Brendan, I think concepts like that forced interoperability are really missing in the left because of that aversion to antitrust. And I think the way he describes cutting their supply lines, I think there's way more of that needed by the socialist left.
I totally agree with you. That is my point, is that you're not going to get from here to there without going through. If you want to make this country more socialistic or full-on socialism, and I've heard many different definitions for what that would look like, you need to figure out how to starve some of these big players of their power. And this is about altering the dynamics of capitalism. And obviously, we had a decent capitalistic, monopolistic or antitrust perspective in this country for 60 some odd years or so. And, during that time, I'm not saying that this is a causal situation, but during that time, we had 90% tax rate on people making over $400,000, marginal tax rate for much of that time. We had the expansion of, the creation of Social Security. We had the creation of Medicare and Medicaid. We had the Voting Rights Act. We had, to the extent that, in terms of the era of the best policies we've had in this country, that were the most egalitarian that we've seen in the context of this country, it also came during a period where we had rigorous antitrust exercised. Now, if you want a more socialistic or full-on socialism in this country, I do not see a path there but for a rigorous antitrust that would take out the massive concentration of power and, frankly, wealth. I just don't see any other way to get there, short of like the armed revolution, which I am skeptical about. And that is why I've, been harping about antitrust. You can go back 6-7 years on this program. And I'm sure there's an antitrust book that has come out that I haven't had on the show, but all the major ones that I've seen, I've had on. And I think it's a hugely important dynamic. I mean, I just don't think it's a coincidence that we had all of those policies that were the most socialistic, the most egalitarian policies, to the extent that there were. Still had a tremendous amount of racism during that era. It's not to say that we don't have racism now, but it wasn't at least as institutionalized. But that's my opinion. So I think you can
also just the principle that you can collectively impose will on private business is a good principle to, I think, stick to.
Totally. Just the concept. I mean, imagine if Americans were at the forefront of their mind was no, businesses don't have one agenda, or we should say our expectations of businesses, of corporations, should not be limited to what their function is in terms of providing shareholders value and paying money. That is, understand, folks, that is just a choice that society makes. And to have society say oh, no. We also assess what are they doing relative to, other people's opportunity to create businesses? What are they doing relative to how they are impacting the community? What are they doing relative to how they're impacting the citizens as citizens? If people had that in their consciousness, that we as a society can make determinations about, whether a company is living up to that. Never mind what they're going to do. They're going to do what they're going to do as a company. But if we as a society, if our citizens had it in their mind, they're like, yeah, it's a perfectly legitimate assessment for me to make of that company as a citizen. That is incredibly empowering. And, that is far more fertile ground for the for radicals, for, non-neoliberal liberals. That is a far more fertile ground for all of that stuff. And so I think that I think it is a folly to be skeptical of a focus on monopoly. I think you can say okay, sequentially, antitrust is necessary, but only as a first step. I think that is legit, but I think it's a folly to really be worried about a focus on monopoly, in my estimation. Even if your agenda is much more radical in terms of ideology. HR Data, do you guys plan to do any live shows? Us in Chicago would love to see you live. That's something to think about, but I think it's a little bit early for that. Penny from New Mexico, seed pods. Okay, here we're going to get into that. The Tim Caucus, I hear the helicopters, I whirlywigs, Nom Dent, Maple Keys. If you're referring to the seeds, they're called Maple Keys. Snooze and Sarandon, helicopters, Sam. Crowder Frostbitten. Yesterday was my 50th birthday. Can I get a left as a best and an attempted pronunciation of Nomiki and shofar? That's not how you spell shofar. But here you go. I'm not reading any more woolly bird things. Kawil return to Toronto. Sam, how do you stay positive and not give an F about all the bad faith attacks from the dumb left toward you? You seem so resilient and with so much negativity online. Any advice on how to protect your mental health would be very helpful. I mean, I get annoyed by it, but I think largely, I guess I just don't get worked up about it. But, that I think is a character defect, probably, that I developed as a child.
It makes you incredibly well suited for your job, though.
Part of the reason why I do this is because I do think that I was genetically, if you were going to go into a laboratory and build somebody to do this type of crap posting and,
how would you describe that particular trait or deficiency as you were saying?
I don't know, I was a fat kid I was fat as a kid.
Oh, really?
And people were mean about it. Very mean about it. And at one point it was just am I going to, allow other people to define my existence in that way? And then I, just started doing snaps. We used to do snaps quite a bit in the buses, insulting each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was an actor, and that's every day your job was to get rejected and not give a shit and go do the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
To get rejected, statistically speaking.
Yeah.
I try and tell Saul, he's playing Little League Baseball. I'm or minor league baseball. And I'm like, dude, do you realize the best hitter of all time only got 4 hits out of every 10 times you get up? Baseball hitting is all about how do I fail and not take it to heart so much that it's going to impact me from going up and hitting again.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically it. I have no advice on how to do that other than, take it on the chin as a child And then as an adult, you just, you're far enough removed from your own emotions that it doesn't bother you.
Well, that last part's just a tad concerning, but
yeah, I mean, it's concerning. It's
but
very
until
concerning.
that, I was, I
it's
thought
very.
it was sound, and then you're like, oh, I, choose to have cognitive dissonance about how I feel. So. Yeah, no, I mean, you got to have your emotions be somewhat part of you inside has to be dead. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. I don't have that issue quite yet, but.
Oh no,
I don't think you have internal death, Sam. I think you photosynthesize this sort of online fervor and the reaction you get sometimes.
It's true. That is true. I like conflict. I like right. Conflict. That is a very good way of putting it. Yeah. Slappy Tubbs. The official botanical name for spinny seed things is Samara. Not kidding. Look it up. By the way, you guys muffled the Homo says, what part of the interstitial? Love the song. Never thrilled about the. Yeah, we did. We did muffle that. We did. Calling from a 201 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 201. 201.
Oh, hello?
Hello.
Hi, this is Ryan calling from New Jersey.
Ryan from New Jersey. What's on your mind?
Good area code.
Yeah, my favorite. But I just had like two quick thoughts, I guess. One about the horse guy with the Kentucky Derby or whatever. I'm just like so glad that Republicans are consistent in their care for like athletic integrity. How they care so much about the horses and also so much about like women's sports and the integrity of women's sports. Like they care about those things equally.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
And the second thing I wanted to call about was just like this narrative I was hearing on like Fox News and stuff that just seemed like BS, but I hadn't really heard anyone talking about. I didn't really know how to counter it.
Well,
there's just like a bunch of people on Fox News saying that people on unemployment are making like $55,000-$60,000 a year right now, and like I don't know where that number is coming from, and it doesn't seem real, but I really don't know how to like disprove it to my parents.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you disprove that either. I can tell you that the supplemental from the federal government is $1,200 a month. Okay? So
yeah,
$1,200 a month.
Times 12.
Times 12, although it's not going to be 12 months long, but let's just say annualized, okay, is $14,000 approximately, right? And then it really is a function of what they were making and what state they're in. But no states provide for you 100% recoupment on what your salary was. So I find it very hard to believe that there's anywhere where that could possibly be even remotely close.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds right. I was just like, I think on Fox News Sunday, like Karl Rove or some person like that, like got on a whiteboard and just wrote down like a ludicrous number.
I mean, it's not inconceivable. I'm trying to think like what are the highest unemployment replacement rates are. I just don't know off the top of my head, but I don't know how you would prove that to your parents unless like you could say like, you got to show me. Like they don't give you an example. They just give you a number. But the fact of the matter is, like, look,
like it's on them to prove it,
right.
not you to disprove it.
You just got to say, like it's not true. Like, but I can tell you this: you can say, like, the most you could possibly be making from the federal government over the course of a year, and it's not, because there has been no year-long program for this, because it was instituted in March. Really April, and it's going to end, I think it's by August or September at the latest. I think it's actually the first week of September. So, maybe they're taking an annualized number and
I think the one thing they're taking into account is, like, they're claiming that, like, if you sum the federal money with the state money, it becomes a lot larger. But
well, I'm telling you right now, like, the federal money is $300 a week extra.
Yeah. Right. He's just saying what Fox is claiming is that, like, supplementarily with the state unemployment.
I know. That's why, like, it depends on what the state is, but it also depends on, like, how much you were making beforehand. And, but if the argument is that you are, if the argument is that's why there's no people coming back to work, it's just simply not the case. It's just simply not the case. We have 470,000 new claims. Just to put it into perspective, it wasn't until we got under, I think it was 550,000 a week of new claims, that we were under what it was at the peak of the Great Recession in 2008. That's a huge number of people losing their jobs. So we have, like, over 400,000 people a week losing their jobs. How can people say the problem is that we can't find workers? Well, then why are you throwing off 450,000, 480,000 people this week?
Okay, I hadn't actually heard that before.
The only thing is, and someone just said maybe they're counting the per child payment in addition to unemployment, but that's a baseline for everybody now. Everybody's getting that per child payment. Not if they're unemployed. So, but look at the unemployment numbers. They're still astronomically high. We have 8 million people unemployed that were employed before, and we're still shedding hundreds of thousands of jobs a week. If there was and there's a lot of people who just, like, still, particularly in these states where you're starting to hear, like, Republican governors, well, COVID's still around and people aren't wearing masks. And there's also a lot of people who say, like, you know what? I'm not going back into work as a checkout person at the supermarket. I'm not going back into work as a waiter. I'm going to try and find a different job because I don't want to be exposed by those dicks. All right, so here it is. Jenna from St. Louis. I'm on unemployment in Missouri. Net $440 per week. That is state and federal combined. That would be about $23,000 annualized. So I don't know how you pay that. The highest unemployment rate payout is Massachusetts at $1,220. Here it is, okay? $1,220 per week. So that is $460, $70, $4,700 a month plus the $1,200. Oh, wait a second. Is that $1,220 a week or a month? $28,000 plus the $14,000. So that's $42,000. I think is the argument.
I think that must be the net though for the month.
$1,220?
No. 47. I should know better than to attempt
the max weekly employment benefit for in Massachusetts is $1,220. Okay, so that's $60K a year, but not sure how long that lasts.
You're also getting taxed on that on the back end.
Right.
Yeah, and in any case, your employer pays into it, right? And
that is the highest.
It's only if you're getting fired from already.
That is the highest.
as
that is the highest. And that person who's making $1,200, $1,220 a week, those people are like, they've got a career.
It's based on the job that you lost. So that's what makes it, as large as that. And of course, Fox is taking these outlier situations in blue states to make a completely, a point to cut unemployment for everybody.
Appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Let's see. All right. One more call right now. Calling from an 805 area code. Who's this we calling from?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Adam. I live in New York City.
Adam in New York City. What's on your mind?
Yeah, first time, long time. And I just wanted to call with some thoughts about the upcoming congressional race for California's 25th district. I know this is a ways away, but I just wanted to get some thoughts out there. Sure. And I thought this race for the 25th congressional district in California might be of particular interest because it's the district that Katie Hill was formerly a representative of, and she resigned. It was all like a nasty scandal. Mm-hmm. And it was also the race that Cenk Uygur ran in last time in 2020.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. If you had any thoughts about that and Cenk's loss, I was a supporter of Cenk, being from the district originally, but I knew it was kind of a long shot.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious what was going on there. But the main reason I was calling was that there is a progressive candidate running this time who I think has, supports the same sorts of platform that Cenk did, but she's homegrown more or less. She's a city councilwoman in the district. She's in fact the first Latina councilwoman in Simi Valley,
What's her name?
Her name is Ruth Luevanos. Ruth, and then Luevanos, Luevanos, and yeah, I said she comes from Simi Valley, which you might know is the home of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and also the site of the Rodney King trial, 91. Gotcha. And it's going to be an uphill battle for Ruth because it's a quote-unquote purple district. Katie Hill, she ran on a somewhat progressive platform, but Ruth is probably slightly left too. Katie Hill, certainly. And Ruth is also running against a Democratic opponent. It's currently represented by Mike Garcia, who's a Republican, former executive with Raytheon, which is, essentially a merchant of death, an arms dealer, one of the largest in the world. He's the current representative. And Ruth's main Democratic opponent going into the primary, and this is a jungle primary in California, of course, is Christy Smith, and she's lost twice against Mike Garcia. Mm-hmm. And she's, a run-of-the-mill sort of centrist Democrat, but she has kind of like a machine that she operates, a political machine that she operates in the district. So it's an uphill battle. But Christy Smith, centrist Democrat, twice failed. She voted against things as basic as like the restoration of voting rights for people who were formerly incarcerated and expanding Medicare to young undocumented people, as well as a whole host of other basic sorts of values she's voted against. So I'm confident, if progressives get behind Ruth Luevanos, like they sort of did for Cenk, that Ruth actually has like a grassroots sort of established in the district. So I just wanted to get the word out there because I know people were following the race last year. If you did have any thoughts, Sam or Emma, about Cenk's run, or more broadly about thoughts about just like progressives running in quote unquote purple districts. Thanks.
I appreciate the call.
Yeah, my thoughts really just was one, it was a special election, so it was a little odd. And two was just, it's hard to run for Congress if you have like a lot of footage of you saying, a bunch of stuff online, and that was used against him, even though he has like the best of intentions. It's just that's probably why I could never run for office. Like, things may not age well when I, say something in 2021 in 5 years or something like that. And like, Cenk's got a big personality, and he'd admit that, and he owned it. But it's hard to win over normie Democratic voters when you you have, I guess, a wealth of material at your opponent's disposal that maybe more conservative voters in that district who are maybe leaning Democratic wouldn't like. So, and Christy Smith ran, she had a lot of money behind her that I think it was difficult for Cenk to overcome. So there were it was a confluence of factors that didn't go well for him.
Yeah, to be honest, I outside of, I think I would have loved him to be in Congress.
Yeah.
I had no sense of, it's literally on the other side of the country. I couldn't know less about that district. I don't know if there is if you can make if there is a broad assessment of progressives running in purple districts. I think it depends.
Katie Porter is an example of.
Yeah, I don't honestly think that the ideology of the candidate is necessarily determinate. It may be there are second order stuff, like the big money was not going to be behind Cenk in that race, right?
And he was tagged as a sexist from the beginning by Christy Smith, and then it was just game over, and that was kind of it. That from my perspective.
Yeah, I have no sense.
Which is not, of course, my experience with him whatsoever. But again, he was online at the very start of this whole streaming thing, and made comments that were used against him later, and it's just Democratic voters really, really don't like that stuff, especially in a district like California 25. A little outside LA. I mean, so it's just they were Katie Hill was their representative. It's just it wasn't meant to be in that way.
Saint 2, does Saul play chess? I'm a chess instructor. I teach youth chess at Glenwood Chess Club in Glenwood, Illinois. That is great. My son, unfortunately, does not live in Glenwood, Illinois, but he does, in fact, play chess.
Your son plays chess?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, chess is a great.
Why are you getting all giddy about that?
Nothing.
Were you a member of the chess team or something?
No. My boyfriend's just really into it recently, but I did grow up playing it a little bit, and it made me feel really smart. So it just brought back memories.
There you go. All right. I just you had some type of reaction, you were. Have some massive investment in chess or something
recently, it's just become, it's reemerged in my life.
All right. I mean,
I'm just so cagey about revealing things about my life.
I understand.
But then it comes
it's
out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, you're blushing at the mention of chess. It's the weirdest reaction I've ever seen. Folks, let's move on because Emma's feeling really uncomfortable about the whole chess talk.
Well, I liked it when I was your son's age. I was getting into it. Okay, great.
Very strange. All right. Oh, this is fun. Hey, folks, what would you do if you had the opportunity to be invited on to Newsmax? You're a former Obama speechwriter. Your name is David Litt. You're brought on to talk about Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live. And here is Newsmax newsman, Rob Schmidt.
This one. David Litt, good morning. Welcome into Wake Up America. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
I did not watch Saturday Night Live. I watched the clips. The show's on too late. Quite frankly, I don't think it's that funny anymore. What'd you think of Elon Musk's performance? This is the first time since 2015 we've had a non-athlete, non-entertainer on the show. The last person to do that and do well with great ratings. Our former president, Donald Trump.
Well, Rob, it's a great question. I mean, what happened on SNL this weekend was that people made stuff up and then said it on television like it's true. And that actually happens pretty frequently in American TV. For example, in 2020, Dominion Voting Systems sued Newsmax over its false claims about election fraud. Newsmax was lying to its own viewers, and Newsmax had to settle that lawsuit. So actually, I just need to check in. Are you still telling that lie, or are you telling new lies?
Wait, are we talking about, I'm sorry, David, are we talking about, do you want to talk about something completely non-related and try to catch me on a Monday morning totally off topic, or do you want to talk about Elon Musk?
Pause it. Hold up.
I can see why.
Wait a second. I didn't realize this was happening on a Monday morning. This is completely unfair. On a Monday morning.
This is Thursday energy.
This is like, yeah.
Fun.
Are you kidding me? This guy, this Obama speechwriter comes in there on a Monday morning of all things? Dude.
You know the Monday morning is sacrosanct at Newsmax.
I actually thought that he was going on when he started to say, like, well, they made things up and then they said them like it's a sketch show. So who cares about this stupid topic? That's where I thought he was going, but it was even better than that.
By the way, this is a really good way that someone who's more interested in progress and leftist movement to go on a right-wing news show and combat with the host not just agree with them
We've seen this before.
Together,
Look,
right?
That guy's never going to get invited back. We're going to continue to play the thing because it's pretty funny.
Well, at least he can sleep at night.
What was that guy's name? Bragman? The guy who...
Rutger Bregman.
Yeah, Rutger Bregman did this to Tucker Carlson one time. Like, he gets on and he just goes right at Carlson. It's a one-off. In fact, when I did my Christmas...
Cornel West may have done that too.
Cornel West?
On Tucker's show where
Oh, I don't think that's not Cornel West's MO generally. He goes on. He'll speak truth to power, but he will.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
He won't burn. He won't leave it. He won't.
He didn't scorch the earth. My point is that he was combative at the very least.
Oh, of course.
Tucker.
How could you not go on Tucker and not be combative?
Well, that's my point.
I mean, how could and.
This is the Seder playbook, though.
This is when I did that CNN thing with the torturing the elf and the war on Christmas. In my head, I had contemplated doing a hit like that on Bill O'Reilly's show. I was hoping to do that on Bill O'Reilly's show, but every time I got booked on Fox, then it would go up into their central booking system, and they had blacklisted me. So I would always get uninvited on there. But then CNN called, and I was like, boom, I'm doing this. I don't give a shit. But here is let's continue with this.
Talking about, I'm sorry, David, are we talking about, do you want to talk about something completely non-related and try to catch me on a Monday morning totally off topic, or do you want to talk about Elon Musk?
Well, I can see why you don't want to talk about Dominion voting systems, because if you do, Newsmax could get sued and lose billions of dollars because these are live.
David, that's fine, David. I know this is a very funny moment for you. I'm sure you didn't sleep last night as you prepared to sort of try and get the morning anchor on Newsmax. I'd be happy to talk with you about whatever you want to talk about. Obviously, it's not the topic that we have set up for right now. So if you'd like to talk about Saturday Night Live, I will do that with you. But obviously, I'm not going to talk about anything else right now.
Say the word.
So you decide right now, in this moment on live television. Go ahead.
Did Dominion voting systems have any impact on the 2020 election?
Oh, that's unfortunate because I was really excited about this interview. I didn't watch SNL on Saturday night, but I thought Elon Musk did an okay job. And he also said that he's got Asperger's. So I thought that was a fascinating component.
How do you know that he did an okay job? I didn't watch. I did an okay job, and he has Asperger's. Thank you.
I was super excited for this interview. I didn't do the minimum amount of preparation for it.
Right.
Wait, were you excited about it, or was he excited and was staying up all night last night? What is it, man?
I know. Well,
they were both staying up, and they were doing it for their own different reasons. It's too bad they didn't call each other.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I can't sleep. It's 3 a.m. I can't wait to go on and say Dominion and see what the look on your face when you realize you can't talk about it or you get sued. I'm up because I'm so excited to hear what you're going to say about Elon Musk on... Unbelievable. I enjoyed that. That's good.
Really good.
It's tough to get
into
that.
What did they think? I mean, why would an former Obama speechwriter want to come on and talk about Elon Musk?
Yeah, that is weird.
I mean, I bet you that guy is probably, some of the speechwriters, they go into entertainment. I bet you he's maybe in that world. I don't know. We should look him up. And
You're right about that.
Yeah. And they brought him in because they see him as an entertainment guy, but they brought him on as a former Obama speechwriter to make it seem like that they can put like, see, we're fair and balanced. We brought somebody who was a former Obama.
That was great.
But listen, while we're talking about, and I want to just say, I did not watch Saturday Night Live on Saturday night, and I did not watch any clips of Elon Musk, and I don't give a shit.
Well, that's a violation of your contract,
But yeah, I don't care. But let's check in with what's happening at the Elon Musk Tesla plant in Fremont, California. Here we go.
Tonight, workers at Tesla are speaking out after an industry blog reported that more than 100 employees have tested positive for coronavirus and more than 1,000 have been exposed. KPX5's Andrea Nakano joins us now with more on what has them most concerned. Andrea?
Yeah, I'm in Alameda, one of the supercharger stations, but it's what's going on at the Fremont plant that's the main concern. Many of the workers there are raising concerns about their health and safety, and they're saying they're being ignored.
Pause it for a second, because I just want to, this is from March 2020. We just should make that clear.
No, 2021, excuse me.
Oh, it is?
Okay, it's from just a month ago.
All right, never mind. Go
2
on.
months ago.
2 months ago.
I feel abandoned. I mean, we all feel abandoned.
Tesla employee Branton Phillips spoke out tonight, saying the company is leaving its workers in the dark about coronavirus cases at its Fremont plant.
One day somebody's sick, we know that. The next day, the 3 or 4 guys that worked around him are also gone. But we're not told anything.
According to Phillips and another former employee, Carlos Gabriel, social distancing protocols are not being followed. The two claim masks are provided, but the rules are not enforced, and there's no record of sanitation of equipment. They contend conditions started to shift after CEO Elon Musk sent out this tweet on May 9th.
He had threatened to leave the state to Texas. And then we saw a complete change from the county, a complete change of mind and about face from the governor even. And they just turned a blind eye.
Tesla, which employs roughly 10,000 people at its Fremont plant, was initially forced to shut down. But Elon Musk publicly battled with the county of Alameda over its shelter-in-place order. Just 9 days after sending out the tweet, Tesla was allowed to fully reopen. Employees say they received an email from Musk that they could stay home if they felt uncomfortable or ill. But Phillips says it's not a realistic option for many.
From my understanding, everybody's been told to get back to work or that's it. I mean, that's basically it.
So first off, for those of you who wonder, like, why is Elon Musk such a douche on Twitter, like being a COVID denier? Because he has a vested interest in his business interests to downplay COVID so that when it comes time to applying pressure on localities as to back off in your inspections or your requirements of how I protect my workers. That's why. It's all consistent. It's all part of a whole right there, right? I mean, it's all part of a project. And let's just contemplate this. We have known for some time, the CDC has updated, I think, on their website, that COVID is aerosolized. So in a factory that big, if you had invested, it would be a significant amount, in filtration mechanisms, and you move that air around quite a bit, and you kept some social distancing so that there was an opportunity for air to move around and you actually filtered out the air. It's conceivable they could have just had no issues at all. But that would have required a certain amount of investment. If he does it in Fremont, he has to do it in blankety blanket. If he does it in blankety blanket, he's got to do it in the other ones. And so this is all it comes down to. And when he goes on Saturday Night Live, the reason why people were upset, in part, I think, to be honest with you, I didn't pay too much attention to it, is because you go on Saturday Night Live when you're trying to whitewash.
Well, I thought he was this innovative, creative guy. He couldn't have come up with some, 22nd century way to make the plants circulate air through more effectively. I mean,
Well,
I thought he's all about moving into the
No, his innovations in that department are to remove like the yellow warning signs because he doesn't like the color yellow, and he doesn't also like beeps when things back up, which are rather important in factories, I would say. But that's his innovation.
Yeah, it's got to just look slick, and then he's heralded as some sort of genius. I tried to watch a little bit of the SNL, and like, I'm not the guy. I don't love the political sketches. Always miss for me, but sometimes they have weirdo sketches that I actually quite enjoy a lot. Difficult watch for me with Elon Musk. I tried to watch some of the YouTube clips. It was a difficult viewing experience that I'm kind of copped out of.
All right. That's okay.
Did more work than Rob Schmidt did.
And it's innovative on his part in that, like, I could invest in protecting my workers, or I could be a disruptor and go on SNL and never have to worry about it.
Right.
Because I'm the guy from SNL. I'm not the guy who's subjecting people to catching COVID.
I mean, Trump also did SNL after was that during the primary?
Oh, I think it was.
It was like when he was getting the most heat, really, I think, for the Mexicans or rapists comments. But
hey, I'm just a guy on SNL. Here, who wants to shake my hair?
Apparently, his crypto Dogecoin crashed during the performance as well, and it's
4 major ones
now.
Oh yeah,
all 4 major ones crashed.
Didn't he say because it was like just a hustle or something like that? That's actually funny. I enjoy that.
Did you hear about that crypto that guy started called Scam, and it like came up to like a $70 billion evaluation?
I believe it. The other Biden just IM'd me. I went to the Mass website to find out how long the benefits last. They only last half a year. So no one is actually getting $60,000 from Mass. At most, they'll get $30,000. So there you go. Oh, this is pretty funny and sad and horrible. 75%, I think it is still, of the Republican Party believes the election was stolen.
Mm-hmm.
Here is Donnie O'Sullivan in Florida talking to some Trump supporters.
You guys both genuinely believe the election was stolen.
Yes.
I mean, that's, if you believe that that's true, that is...
Is that horrible?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it is. Horrible. Is it horrible that we would even be in the situation to even think that?
But it's false.
No, it's not. Why would they have all those ballots hidden under tables? Why did that man drive that truck all the way across state lines
It wasn't like
with ballots?
the ballots under table thing with Giuliani and Georgia. That's all been proven to be false.
It has not. No. I watched it on TV.
Look, the power of what is on cable news is still pretty big. A narrative that is repeated over and over again, even if it means people are being sued about it or whatnot after the fact, it has an impact. There's a reason. There's a reason why Murdoch likes those TV channels.
What am I supposed? I mean, what was like?
We're all left.
Yeah, I mean,
it sucks. I hate it. I think like people who downplay the effect that right-wing propaganda machines have on just the lives of people, like this alienates people from the rest of their families. It's really disgusting. And like, yeah, that's all I want to say about that.
Yeah.
All right. Final phone call of the day. Calling from a 773 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sammy, Emma, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's this?
Anthony in Chicago. How are you?
Anthony, Chicago. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, just talking about media coverage, I mean, it's not even like conservative media, just to Matt's point. I mean, like this weekend we got a great example of that with a dangerous Chinese rocket that was going to drop on your head at any second. But when Elon's rockets were falling and they were talking about the beautiful light show over Seattle that it provided to everybody, it's hilarious in a sad way. I wanted to call in to kind of just bore you guys about K through 12 finance, if I may. I usually call in about this, so apologies in advance. But talking about nutrition funding for schools, it's a main topic. And Sam, I know you're an expert in K-12 education, overwhelmingly funded by private property taxes. And when it comes to nutrition funding, this past year has been a major deficit driver on a lot of K-12 districts here in Chicago, particularly. Even though we were doing like pick up bag lunches and things like that for students, like we were really only distributing about a third of the meals to students. So the gap in food insecurity, especially in cities, has been just increasing drastically across the country. And, there's a lot of stopgap efforts happening right now that, will maybe bridge the gap for a short period of time. But the issue with how districts receive revenue from the federal government is really like the core of the issue. What they do is you get revenue based on a meal. So you get like a dollar rate per meal that you provide. And for a lot of K through 12 districts, you want to send all of your property tax revenue out to schools to pay for teachers. And in our case, teachers get a COLA of 3% per year, but we can only raise our property tax levy by 2.5% per year. So we want any federal program, especially like nutrition, to be self-sustainable, right? So you're not impacting your operating funds. And because, you kind of just get a set rate per year per meal, you have to cover your labor costs. It really forces us into a race to the bottom in order to have meal costs that are as low as possible. And that's why Aramark makes a killing every year, not just with prisons, but with K through 12 schools, because they could provide dirt cheap meals that allows us to have some sort of an operating margin in that program. There needs to be a serious conversation about changing up how the federal government pays for school meals, something like a per cost reimbursement or like an at cost reimbursement for schools. I mean, that'll allow, school districts to really experiment with things like, having community gardens and growing their own food and actually having money left over at the end of the year to expand infrastructure and change the way that we're doing this, because we're barely scraping by. And even though the stopgap measures are like helping us just catch up, you're left with no money at the end of the year because we have labor contracts, and labor is the biggest cost driver, and you just get the cheapest meal that you possibly can. It's really, really sad. It really needs to be part of the conversation. I don't think it really has become it, but yeah, the way that the federal government pays for school meals is completely backwards, and it leaves no room for actually growing new programs and providing truly like nutritious meals on a day-to-day basis. So,
hey, if
anyway, thanks for the time.
Anthony, if you have somebody who's written anything like that, send it at majorityreporters@gmail.com. At the very least, we'll do an interview on the Peacock show, and it'll give us, it's basically one of the ways that Emma and I now sort of like learn stuff is we just, we don't know about that. Let's just interview somebody who knows exactly what they're talking about.
Yes. You guys should watch those interviews.
All right. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll try to dig something up.
Thanks,
I'll
Anthony.
Thank you.
All right. We got time for one more quick call. Call from a 732 area code. Who's this? You are the final caller of the day.
Hey, what's up? Is it me?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Coop from Brooklyn. First time caller. I've been listening for a few years now. Want to report back. I've been canvassing for public power in New York for the last few weeks.
What is public power?
It's basically two bills that have been put forward in the New York Senate to democratize the energy grid. Basically, one is to allow New York State to set up their own public utilities. And the other one is to take control of Con Edison and run it through the state government. We've been having some good results on it, phone banking, canvassing. We have a number of legislators that have signed up and just wanted to put it forward to people so they're aware of it.
What would it actually do? Like, what exactly? How would that work? We would just, as a state, just take over the business. Most of the people actually do the work, as opposed to like shareholders and stuff like this would be employed by the state at that point. Is that what would happen?
Essentially. So there's two different. I think it's kind of like in a infancy stage, but the first bill is the one that I got it up right now. If you want to get more information, it's publicpowernewyork.org. But basically, the first bill is New York State will either purchase or basically will probably pay for the average share price of the companies or whatever, an independent auditor says they're worth. Take the infrastructure they have in place, try to make it fully green energy funded by 2025. Ostensibly keep all the employees on board that are, doing their job well, and try to build on that and have it be run by New York State, where there's no profit that goes to shareholders. All of that money will be reinvested, and hopefully we get a better energy grid out of that.
That makes sense to me. It's basically like whatever that profit margin is, 10, 50. I mean, who knows? What is the profit margin? Do you know?
I don't know what it is specifically for Con Ed, but I know like most utilities, like 10 to 20%.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So that 10 to 20%, I mean, can you imagine 1/5 of the revenue generated annually by these entities would be reinvested in efficiency and maintenance? Like, how long would it take? Within 5 years, you will have taken a year's worth of revenue and just reinvested into this, into efficiency and into durability and sustainability. I mean, it's just no brainer. No brainer. No brainer.
Well, so everyone in New York, call up your legislators, support, go to publicpowerNewYork.org. And one more thing real quick, for Emma, huge Knicks fan. Wanted to get your take on the team, and should we send Elfrid Payton into the sun?
Absolutely, we should send Elfrid Payton into the sun. I'm so glad you are an intelligent Knicks fan that understands, like, just because Elfrid Payton can, can score, even though he's very streaky, he's not good at facilitating the offense and should not be starting. Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled about it. That's literally the only problem I have with what Thibodeau's been doing. But that's like a very common thought shared by Knicks fans. It's incredibly exciting. And now LeBron's going to come back on Tuesday. Did you hear this? Just in time for the Knicks to play them in LA at 10 p.m. So I'll be groggy on Wednesday morning.
Appreciate the call. All right. On Friday, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Kristen Gillibrand of New York, Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, and Gwen Moore of Wisconsin introduced the Universal School Meals Program Act of 2021. Much love, MR Crew from Colorado. Guy, thank you. All right, 5 IMs, and then we're out of here. The Post left. Just noticed you edited the Fun Half song. Appreciate it. Retcon. Nothing specific about the divorce, just that midlife crisis comment was projection, and you talk about your divorce all the time? Do I talk about my divorce all the time?
No.
You talk about it maybe more than most, but all the time is overstating it.
You talk about it because you're just open. I mean, that's just, like, what is wrong with people? That's so fucking rude.
What do I talk about?
No, you make jokes about it. I mean,
like, what do I talk about all the time? Oh, like maybe in the context of like ads.
You realize this is like, he's a human being. Stop fucking talking. Like, yeah.
That's not true,
actually, he's a human container. And stop.
I'm a human container.
Yeah. Jesus.
I'm a human container.
People are so rude.
It was better than when I used to talk about my wife. Yeah,
take it back.
Glenn makes $80,000 to $160,000 a month, according to Fox News. Well, they would know. Joey the Bear. I know a lot of us would like to see Hassan on the show, but having Vaushan would be fun also. I know the huge from yours, the woke boomer. I am not a boomer. Mind pillow guy. Maybe they were trying to talk about household incomes on unemployment with 2 kids, working parents, 2 kids, but I don't know why we are pretending Fox doesn't just straight up lie about the stuff. All right, 2 more. Sam's Only Fan. Hello, Sam and crew, MR Crew. Can we get someone to talk about what's happening in Jerusalem and what the U.S. can do, government, Congress, civil society, to pressure the Israeli government? Yes, that is actually in the works for tomorrow. Final IM of the day. Chris from Taiwan. Another great thing about antitrust is that it can be enforced based upon already existing laws and doesn't require new legislation. Exactly correct. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there.